All right. Welcome back to another episode of Scaling Secrets Podcast. I am your host, Alex Mahaz. Today, we have a true powerhouse joining us. She is Integrated Work CEO and owner. Her 30-plus year career includes experience working in different organizations across the private, public, corporate, and non-profit sectors to create meaningful and effective ways of living and working together across differences. More than a decade of teaching university courses, communication, organizational culture, diversity, and leadership disciplines, her passion and unique talents is truly remarkable. She's also highly personalized executive coaching, and she's known for developing transformational experiences and helping people amplify their impact by being more human-like together. Without further ado, let's welcome Jennifer Simpson to the show. How are you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Alex. Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, we didn't give you your full intro, but we figure we highlight the key points. So let's jump right into it. So, as we enter a new decade, how do you envision just the evolution of leadership, and what key changes do you see in the future with leadership?
Absolutely. I think the big opportunity in front of us right now is really to take what we've been learning about leadership, what we've been teaching and talking about leadership in terms of authenticity and being conscious, being intentional, and really translate that into the systems that we're building. And I think what's exciting for startups in particular is that you can start from scratch and be really intentional with what you're building instead of having to unwind 30, 50, 100 years worth of systems and processes. And so let's set our systems up to let leaders lead the way we know works best.
I love that. I love that. And going off of that, so when you first founded your company, Integrated Work, how was it for you those first couple months developing systems? Were there already systems in place, or was it, learning as you started scaling the business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a pretty unique situation. I'm not the founder. Integrated Work has been around for 25 years. And so we were a woman-owned startup a long time ago, and I successfully navigated an ownership transfer with the founder in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. And so, on the one hand, we're an established business. On the other hand, we're really going through the same transformation that the world is going through, right? Everything moving to more hybrid, to more remote. Literally, the week the world shut down, we were packing up physical paper boxes of files, and all of that stuff didn't move with us, right? And so we now live in a world where the ways of organizing that were put in place 20, 30, 50 years ago just don't really work for the world we live in. And so there's still very much a startup culture. You ask about the systems and processes. I think the biggest thing that we've done with a lot of intention over the last couple of years is build, while we've been moving to more digital, cloud-based and automated systems, really making sure that we're baking our values into that so that the systems we put in place are helping us be more ourselves every day instead of interfering or causing friction with who we're trying to be in the world.
Love that. Being able to adapt and staying innovative, especially like with a pandemic thrown out of nowhere, it's really important for any company, small, medium size, Fortune 500. So definitely agree. So you talk a lot about just the Koan Method and, just how that was developed. And for me personally, it's really fascinating. I actually started applying it throughout this week, preparing for this audio. So I'm just curious, can you share with us how you first conceived that method and how it impacts individuals?
Absolutely. So the Koan Method, Breakthrough Leadership for a Divided World, came out as a book at the beginning of September. And so I've really spent the last several years taking, as you said in my introduction, these 30 years or so of experience working with leaders and organizations and seeing what works and seeing, again, what we've been teaching individual leaders and saying, well, how do we put that all together into a system of organizing, into a way of thinking about how work actually gets done? And so I like the term koan for two reasons. On the one hand, in Zen Buddhism, a koan is like a mantra that you reflect on, right? And it's designed to sort of break your brain a little bit, get you to think about things in a way that takes you out of the ordinary and has you loosen your grip on what you think you know is true a little bit. And I think that's really important in our world right now to say, what got us here isn't necessarily going to get us there. How do we really sit with the question of what might be needed next? And then Koan really serves as a nice mnemonic for remembering the key elements that I think are important for these systems going forward. We need them to be more kind and really rooted in human first principles of empathy. We need them to be more open and really take transparency and trust and inclusion to heart. We need them to be more adaptive, resilient, agile, able to change a little bit more nimbly on a dime. And we really need to stop thinking of organizations in silos and start thinking of them as networks of relationship, in community, in connection, getting things done together, because most of our big problems today aren't going to be solved by any one company or organization. We've got to figure out how to solve these things together.
I love that. Definitely. You said a couple really key points in there. But I think the biggest thing I sum it up as is it's important to have teams, great teams and great people that are kind of working towards a common goal, and that are all kind of on the same bus together, and they all know their individual contributes that they can bring to really just maximize a company and hit the overall goal. So I love that. Just kind of going off of that, can you share just some success stories or experiences you've experienced with just Koan, and any type of breakthroughs that you've witnessed personally or within integrated work?
I think there's so many great examples laid out in the book, and part of what was exciting about the process of writing it is really thinking through how many great examples there are out there. I mean, it's easy to point to the things that aren't quite there yet, but there really are so many examples of people, putting new methods and models into place. And so one of the stories that I really, and this is a large organization that I think many people will be familiar with, well in advance of the pandemic, Unilever, which is obviously a giant global corporation, really recognized that its greatest source of innovation was its network, right? Was its supply chain, was its partners, was, people on the ground in dozens of countries all over the world. And so they created an online platform both to crowdsource the problems, right? A place where people who were connected to their network could say, I'm trying to solve for this problem. And then other people who are part of the network would help to generate the solutions. Now, for a corporation the size of Unilever, of course, they've got their own R&D programs. But when you stop thinking of yourselves as living inside the walls of your organization and really see your network of impact more broadly, you can ask more questions and become a lot more nimble as a result. And part of what that enabled when the pandemic hit was to identify places where the business could pivot really rapidly to be responsive to this dramatic change that was happening to all of us all over the world. And so they were able to take hand sanitizer, which was a really small part of their business line pre-pandemic. They had a few plants generating a few 100,000 units a month, and rapidly tap into their supply chain, their partners on the ground. And within 2 months, have over 60 plants stood up all over the world, generating, millions of units a month. And so, I think those places where you tap into relationship early, you really find that when things get challenging, those relationships are part of what can carry you through.
And how important is it to develop those relationships early on? Let's say, if you're working with a new company or a client, do you have a process that you follow to build those relationships? Or is it something that takes time, like a muscle you have to continue to grow and build it?
I think as much as anything, it's a mindset to adopt early, right? I mean, certainly the best relationships get developed over time. They're nurtured and cultivated. And, if you go into a relationship from a transactional mindset, looking for what you're going to get in return, the depth of that relationship isn't necessarily going to be there. And so I think especially for startups, it can be tricky, right? When you've got targets you're trying to hit and you're trying to generate revenue and figure out how you're going to bring this dream to life pretty quickly. But I think recognizing that building quality relationships early is what's going to sustain you over the long term, right? And that people who are willing to cut you that quick check or say yes to a higher pressure ask might not be the same people who are really going to be there for you when things get tough. So it's really a question of where and how do you want to invest that energy?
I love that. I love that. Knowing where to put it in the right spots and really just like a value add too, being able to provide value. And it's not so much, just take, but give and take too. And that's how you really build trust and credibility with others. So, but I want to talk about just, Zen Buddhism. I know you mentioned that a lot, just, in the book and with some of your work. So can you just talk about like how that has influenced your philosophy and how has this, ancient practice really impacted your approach to leadership and personal development?
Absolutely. I mean, Zen shows up pretty prominently in the book. And, really, I consider myself sort of a student of ancient wisdom traditions, is the way I like to talk about them, right? I grew up in a pretty traditional religious household. My mom's a minister. Spirituality has always been part of my life. But pretty early on, I recognized that almost every major religion in the world has these common threads, these common principles at their core. And, I'm more interested in those sort of underlying universal truths than I am in any one particular dogma. And part of what I appreciate about Buddhism in particular is that it doesn't actually describe itself as a religion, right? It really is a way of being, a set of practices. And that really resonates with me. And so, this notion again of a koan is really recognizing that we're not meant to have all the answers up front, right? And that part of the joy and beauty of being human is that we are given these questions, right? And we get to sort of live our way into finding our solutions to them. And if we can be a little less impatient with that process and really bring sort of curiosity and even a little spirit of wonder or joy to discovering, why am I being confronted with this problem? Why am I facing this pain point? We actually find ourselves a lot more open, both to partnering with others to come up with solutions that are great for all of us. And we're just much less attached to it's supposed to be going a certain way. And I find that is part of what really unlocks the potential for creativity and innovation.
I love that. I've noticed that just in my business and throughout my career, being as present as possible and knowing this is the exact spot you're supposed to be in right now and not worry so much about the outcome or like where you're going. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's so hard because you're so career or you're so, goal focused. So, everything's systematic. So it's really hard to kind of just unlock. But I definitely can see, how that philosophy really helps you stay present and, remind yourself that, this is where you're supposed to be. This is the right spot. So I love that. So I want to pivot to just a little bit, many believe that like entrepreneurship can be really a powerful tool, just for positive social change. Do you share that belief, first of all? And then, how is entrepreneurs, how can they leverage their ventures to make impact meaningful relationships in their communities and throughout society?
Oh, thank you. That's such a great question. Yes, absolutely. I believe that. And integrated work, we just went through the process of becoming certified as a B Corp. And so we got official B Corporation certification just about a year ago now. And, if anyone in your listening group isn't familiar with that yet, B Corp is a global certifying body that really reviews organizations who say that they're out to be a force for good, and creates a lot of transparency around that, right? So you both go through a review process, and then you really commit to walking your talk publicly. And so Ben and Jerry's and Patagonia are some of the biggest and best well-known versions of that. But I think I've also been very involved with an organization called SheEO. It's rebranded itself as Coreless, but really focused on getting startup funds into the hands of female entrepreneurs, for example. And, this is an organization that's really based on this principle of radical generosity, starting from giving first and investing in your big dream and your bold idea and worrying about what the return is later, really trusting that if I invest in you and your dream, that's going to generate the return. And most of the organizations that get funded through that channel are working on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that's another great metric or benchmark for startups or entrepreneurs who are looking to indicate to the world that these are values that they hold, right? Being able to take some of these external benchmarks and say, that's what we're working on. And then we can say, and we're working on it with all these other people. And together that adds up to making a difference.
I love that, kind of showing the proof of what works, the success stories with other companies, other people, and providing that value. I love that. Yeah, so I just going off of all that, I want to dive in a little bit into the company itself, integrated work. Some of just like the programs and consulting that you guys offer. Can you just touch on those without going too deep? Let's say, a company wants to work with you or partner with you. What are some things that they can look for?
Absolutely. I mean, a couple of things. We really love working with mission-driven leaders and organizations who've got a clear sense of where they want to go and just aren't quite sure how to get there. And so we do a lot of strategic planning work. We've got a strategic planning model that I think both makes it easy for organizations who don't have tons of time and tons of resources to really go deeper than they thought they might be able to go and come out with that sort of both clarity of a North Star to guide by, but also really concrete next steps to get there. And we really take a JEDI or justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion approach to all of our work. And so that infuses and informs a lot of the consulting strategy work that we do. And then we've also, over the last 3 to 5 years, really been growing that aspect of our practice and helping other organizations that are implementing JEDI policies, trying to improve recruitment and retention. We're in the process of deploying a JEDI program to a firm that's got 1,500 employees globally, and really thinking about how these issues, are different in different countries and communities around the world. So, again, the core of our work is helping those mission-driven leaders who have their eye on the prize and just can't quite make out all the steps to getting there. And we've got a lot of doors we can go in to partner with folks in that way.
I love that. I think just kind of going off some of the websites and the programs on the website, it seems like there's a great diversity of just different leadership development that can be offered, and depending on the company and the needs. So I love that. So yeah, we've talked a lot about just creativity and how important that is as a business owner and really just in life to be successful. Can you just touch on like how leaders can really embrace and harness creativity and how undervalued I think it is now in today's leadership models?
Absolutely. And I think there's 2 dimensions to that. I mean, the first thing I would say is that any change you're trying to affect in your organization or for your team starts on the inside, right? All leadership is inherently an inside job. And so, if there are things that aren't working exactly the way you wish they would on your team, what are the places that you're contributing to that friction in some way, right? Whether we mean to or not, I guarantee you that we are. And so I think the first move of leadership is a lot of self-awareness and self-reflection. And then, doing that work with the broader team, I think is really, an act of trust and honoring people, right? That if as leaders, we don't acknowledge that the best ideas must come from beyond us, right? Then the company can only ever be as smart as we are, right? And why bother starting a company in the first place, right? I mean, you should just be out doing your own thing if that's your mindset. If you want to grow a company with other people, the value of doing that is unleashing their creativity, right? And so as leaders, really learning how to create those conditions, psychological safety that allow people to say, I'm not sure that's the best path, or what if we tried it this way, or wow, I was looking at it from a different angle. That takes intentionality on the part of leaders. But when you get it right, amazing things can happen.
100%. And you touched, on psychological safety. And, I work in, with a lot of different agile teams. We have a few different scrum masters on our teams. And that's a huge emphasis, is allowing a safe space for others to voice their opinions and what they're working on, and allow them to approach you and kind of take that hands-off approach. And I think it's slowly starting to implement into a lot of new organizations. And I think the more and more I network and talk to people, there's not as much, micromanaging going on, at least from what I've seen in my industry and with others. So I love that. I think it's really important. It allows people to really thrive and be the best that they can. So, but yeah, so, I want to just, wrap up with a few questions, just on the future, like some goals that you're working towards personally, or, within integrated work, let's say within the next year and a half, that you see the company going, and some things that you're implementing.
As I said, we're about 1 year into our membership in this global B Corp community. And so we're really leaning into that and doing our own networking and really building partnerships and relationships with other organizations that have a similar mission, but maybe a slightly different service offering, or really finding places where we can partner synergistically. I think that's the way organizations will grow, or that solution generation will happen going forward. And then with this book just having come out, I obviously am doing some podcasts, and the reason for writing the book was to start a conversation, right? I mean, it's not so that people can have one more book on their shelf or on their iPad, but really so that I can begin to take these 30 years of experience and start working with people who really see the potential to build new models. I've always loved the Buckminster Fuller quote that if you want to change something, don't fight the existing model, build a new one that will make the old ones obsolete. And so that's where I've got my energy and attention. I want to work with people who say, yeah, I want to be part of building those new models. Let's go figure it out together. And then at Integrated Work, we're actively in the process of exploring employee ownership. And I also think that that's really a next evolution of sort of democratizing organizations and putting in place principles that allow us to lead and organize in different ways. And so we're still sort of at the baby steps stage of that journey ourselves, but I'm really excited to see what it unfolds over the next couple of years.
It's awesome. I'm super excited to just see the future and how that does unfold. And you mentioned a few really great things. I think one of them is really being innovative and being able to adapt and grow. And I think that there's so many companies out there, I won't name them, but that are still stuck on, this is how we've always done it, and this way works for us, and we're going to keep doing it this way. And I think that mindset is just flawed, and I think that it doesn't hurt to be open-minded and innovative. So I love that. Last question, what's like one piece of advice you could give to a business owner that's just starting out? They might be a founder, or they might be trying to start a startup, and they're really just looking to start building teams. What type of approach or advice would you give them as they're in the beginning stages of their entrepreneurship journey?
A couple of things. I think the first thing is, don't try to do it alone. I mean, I think that there are so many people who feel like until they've got their idea all figured out and it's pretty and perfect, and they've got their website and their logo's perfect, and like they're not ready to tell their friends about it until they feel like it's really solid. And it's lonely, hard work. And so I just really encourage people to lift the curtain a little earlier than you might want to, and build community around you as you go, because it'll both make it more fun and you'll actually produce something better in the long run. I think the other piece is, as you're building your teams, particularly early on, really, I mean, I'm just a big proponent of hiring for culture and fit and growing skills and capacity. There might be certain specific technical skill sets you need, but at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to teach people how to perform a task than it is to, teach them to care about what you care about. Right. And so finding people who are really mission aligned and believe in what it is that you're trying to accomplish in the world, that's what's going to make your team most successful in the early days.
I love that. And really leveraging other people and growing a community of people that are working together. I think that's so important. I know there's a lot of people that they're like the solo entrepreneurs. They try to do it on their own, and it's really tough. You can't be the best person or version of yourself when you're only relying on one or two people. So I love that. I love that. So is there anything else you'd like to close out with? I'd love to know where we can find the book and anything else you're working towards.
People can go to koanmethod.com, so KOANMETHOD.com. And that links to the book. And from there, you can find your way to integrated work. The audiobook is coming out this week or next week. So you can find that Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy your online stuff. And again, really, I'm in this for the conversation. And so, I hope people will buy the book and share the book. What's really most important to me is that people latch onto an idea and go talk to someone about it and then reach out to me. I'm not hard to find. So I hope people will let me know if something has touched them, and I look forward to being in conversation.
Awesome. Well, we'll put the link when this drops. We'll put the link to the book and the audio book, and we'll definitely make sure our viewers have access to that too. So, but Jennifer, it was a pleasure having you today, and learning more about your awesome company and the great things you have going and the future for yourself and just your journey. It was really awesome hearing your story.
Well, thanks for having me, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, this is another episode of Scaling Secrets Podcast. I'm your host, Alex. Until next time.